Balei tshuva, people of true penitence. Darkod lios shvelim v'anovim bioser. Their manner of behavior is they're extremely humble and low-spirited, which I will explain in a minute. What does that mean? How does it manifest itself? If let's say those fools, people who don't think, and they disgrace them due to the original behavior, which they want to forget about. Don't you remember you used to behave this way? You used to this and this. In the past, you used to say these things. They don't pay attention. They're not touched by them. They're not moved by them. They listen and they rejoice. And they understand that hearing that and you're no longer that, that's the merit. The merit is I don't respond. Don't respond. You know, the Mishnah tells us Pirkei Avos. It speaks about the characteristics of the students of Avram. They were shval ruach. Literally means they were like low-spirited. What do you mean low-spirited? They had plenty of spirit. Avram had such vigor and such conviction. He took on the world single-handedly. What does it mean, shval ruach? You know something? There's certain people, they make the world turn over many times, but they're under the radar. They are the cause of many things, but you'll never know it's them. Because outwardly, the spirit is what is under the radar. It's shval ruach. The way they portray themselves and magnify themselves, you don't see who they are. Now, the example I always used to give, you know, the Yad Avram, Mr. Glick all the years was underwriting Yad Avram. The breakfast, the location, and Mr. Glick was in the world one of the most successful diamond dealers on an international level. And people would come in, and there was a person, he just moved here from Paris. He became a gynecologist, and the person comes over, he says, would you like a toasted bagel? Would you like some fish? And he's serving him hand and foot. He thought he was, you know, some retired person, has nothing better to do than, and he was given a task. He has to attend to the requests, unofficial waiter, a busboy. Lady found out this is Mr. Glick. Till today, just going back 20 years, he can't get over it. This level of humility, I mean, the man could buy and sell the place 25 times over at least. And yet he's busy bringing toasted bagels and fish and would you like some juice or whatever it is? Then the person said, you know, I'll hire somebody. No, he personally wanted to make sure everybody was satisfied and taken care of as he felt they should be taken care of. That's shval ruach. But when you came to a business deal, Louis Glick was like a tiger. If he had to stand up for a principle, he was like a lion. That's how he was. He's turning 101 years old now. He's still alive. But although his mind is not what it was at all, doesn't make a difference, but that's who he was. Very special person. Avram Avinu was shval ruach. But he actually, the undercurrent of all existence was Avram Avinu. But he was onav, he was humble. The humble means the shval ruach, the low spirit. See, a person's low spirit, say maybe he has a problem with self-esteem. Shval ruach, but he was onav. Humility gives us an understanding why he's low-spirited. Not because he can't be obvious. He has no interest in being obvious. Because he's humble. Could you imagine? Moshe Rabbeinu, God attested to the fact Moshe Rabbeinu was the most humble human being who ever walked the face of the earth. But yet, Moshe Rabbeinu did things which are not to be understood. He took the bull by its horns and made certain decisions without even consulting with Hashem. He comes down with the two tablets, the first set of tablets. He sees the golden calf. He smashes it. He did not consult with Hashem when he smashed those tablets. Do you know what level of confidence and responsibility you have when you break those tablets? They were fashioned by God. They were inscribed by God. How do you break them? Because he understood what he had to do. He understood that. Humility means there's no therefore. There's no therefore. You do what you do because that's what you're supposed to do. Moshe Rabbeinu understood who he was. There was no Jew who walked the face of the earth like Moshe Rabbeinu. But although that was a reality, there's no therefore. Therefore, I expect. Therefore, I want acknowledgement. There was no therefores. I do what I'm supposed to do. I was put on this face of earth for one purpose. And I want to be fully invested in that purpose, nothing other than that. And what is that? If it means to bring God's glory, nothing other than that. There's no self-interest whatsoever. That's Moshe Rabbeinu. He's the most humble man who ever walked the face of the earth. But he was fierce. Moshe Rabbeinu, when he saw the Egyptian beating the Jew, what did he do? He immediately killed him. When he fled to Midian, and he saw the daughters of Yisro, who shepherdesses, they were being attacked, what did he do? He immediately fought them off, watered the flocks, and they went home. He didn't even go accompany him home that he should get any credit for what he did. So what does that say? He's not interested in acknowledgement whatsoever. So being humble is a confirmation on the shval ruach, on the low spirit. It's not because he doesn't have the spirit. He has no interest in revealing that spirit. Chofetz Chaim, you ever see pictures of him? There was a picture that was found, it was taken off a newsreel just about maybe 5 years ago. It was known he did not wear rabbinic garb. He wore a fisherman's cap. He wore a double-breasted coat. Of course, he looked like a Jew. He had a beard. He had side locks. Not look like a chassid. That's who he was. There was a story. Somebody once came to his yeshiva Radin, and it was snowing, and there's this old man outside shoveling the snow. He thought he was the caretaker. He was clearing the snow so the yeshiva students, when they come to study or to pray, the path should be there, so nobody should slip. They should easily be able to walk that path. A man of your stature, world-renowned. People would pay anything in the world to get a blessing from him. This man is shoveling the snow. He's taking out the garbage. What about your dignity? The dignity is you do what you're supposed to do. If God wants me to shovel the snow, I shovel the snow. If I'm supposed to, whatever I'm supposed to do, that's what I do. But he was fierce. When the Polish government wanted to ban certain things in Jewish education, he went to Warsaw and he met with the Minister of Education. And he said, I'm going there, even if I have to give my life for the sake of Torah education, I will give my life. He says, even if they decapitate me, I'm going. And he spoke to the Minister of Education, and the Poles were naturally anti-Semitic. But when he met the Chofetz Chaim, and the Chofetz Chaim spoke in Yiddish, and there was no interpreter, and he said many very strong things to the Minister of Education. And after he finished speaking and presenting his case, the Polish minister says to the Chofetz Chaim, whatever you want, I will do. We're going to leave things as they are. So they asked the Minister of Education. He didn't speak Yiddish. He didn't understand Yiddish. How do you understand? Chofetz Chaim speaking Yiddish, and he only understands Polish or French. What was the means of communication? So they asked the Minister of Education, how did you understand what the rabbi was saying? He says, the two types of languages. There's the language of the mouth, and there's the language of the heart. I was able to feel his language from his heart. I understand what he wanted, and I said 100%, absolutely, he has what he wants. That's the story with the Minister of Education. Although he was an anti-Semite, He had no love lost for Jews. Didn't make a difference. You meet a man like the man is so humble, so meek. Wasn't meek. When you met him, this man was the Rock of Gibraltar. There's no ifs or buts. You can't budge the man. But did you know who he was? He shovels the snow. He's taking out the trash. It's not contradictory. You do what you're supposed to do. And you have to be fierce when you're supposed to be fierce. Otherwise, you're under the radar. I had a very special relationship with Rav Steinman. Rav Aaron Leib Steinman. He was one of the leading Torah sages. Passed away, whatever it is, 8 years ago. He lived till 104. This man was one of a kind. Besides being a leading Torah sage, but his level of practicality, insight, understanding people and issues, one of a kind. And once he made a decision, you couldn't move him. And you understood why? Was he presented his case was so compelling, there's no way to see it other than the way he presented it. One time I come in, and he had a tremendous sense of humor. And he had many detractors. And you know, in Israel, like they have these when they want to make announcements, they have these boys men riding on bicycles with a pail of glue with a brush, and they have these posters, and they smear the wall with glue, and they paste the poster on the wall. And the person on the bike goes to the next wall, another pig. So he had many detractors. And the people, because he took on certain positions, they said terrible things about him. Terrible things. Totally inappropriate. I come in, he has a few of these posters on his desk in his home. And he says to me, he says, take a look at this. In Yiddish, it's called Pashkevilla. All this foolish propaganda, foolishness. And he says to me, take a look at this. See, he says, look what they say about me. And he starts laughing. Never, ever spoke a negative word about his detractors. Never. His level of humility, if you tried to do anything to tarnish Torah, he was a tiger. But a personal attack, you could say anything to the man. The word a water off a duck's back was an understatement. Nothing. People try to hurt him. Not a word. Would not say a word. This whole constructive this, totally ignored it. He was so humble, it's not to be believed. But as humble as he was, anybody knew him, he was like iron. You know, they called Margaret Thatcher the Iron Lady. Loved him. He was the Iron Man. His will, his determination, his level of commitment was ironclad. Couldn't move the man. And it was a merit to know such a man, to be the takeaways you had from the man, what you could learn. And here you have a man, a giant. He has no interest in any level of acknowledgement. So we can't even hold up a candle to the man. You want to be acknowledged for what? So many lessons you could learn. Well, you see, he's a backward person. He doesn't know. If he would only know the value of being acknowledged, he would take advantage. No, he understands what it's all about. We find that Joshua, was Moshe Rabbeinu's successor. And the Gemara tells us Yeshua had many contemporaries, peers. And they had the knowledge base. They could have been Moshe's successor, but they weren't chosen. Why? So the Gemara tells us, because before Moshe would give a Torah lecture, he would arrange the chairs, he would arrange the manuscripts, to be able that Moshe, when he would give the lecture, the Torah lecture, they could follow and they could maximize on the lecture. And he would clean up afterwards. This is Yeshua ben Nun. So when Joshua was chosen to be Moshe's successor, you know what they said? And they realized, even though knowledge-wise, they may have been just as knowledgeable. They said, woe to that disgrace, woe to that embarrassment. If we would have only known the value of setting up the tables, the chairs, and the manuscripts, we would have been there immediately. So why didn't they? It's beneath our dignity. People of our caliber, we should be busy with these mundane tasks. You know, you get that, an ordinary person does that. Yeshua, there's no such thing as ordinary. It was to facilitate Torah. Yeshua did it. Set up the location where people would sit with the manuscripts. He did everything. He would clean up afterwards. And that merit, because of that demonstration, expression of humility, he merited Moshe's successor. And he had this, was endowed with this special capacity to be able to be that disseminator, to be a reflection of what his teacher was. He was like the moon reflecting the light of the sun. Many years ago, my mashgiach, he was my Rebbe also. He was a student, he studied in the Mir in Europe. And he had very special mentors, very holy people. He himself was a very holy person. His name was Rav David Krongles, blessed memory, Zechariah Bracha. And he had gone to a wedding in Cleveland. And in those days, he didn't wear a long coat. He wore a short jacket, suit jacket. But he wore a Hamburg. And somebody asked him, who are you? What do I do? So he said his first name, without rabbi. And he says, I'm a Malamed. What is a Malamed? A teacher who teaches young children is called a Malamed. A Malamed. So later they found out who he was, that he actually ran the yeshiva in Baltimore. He was under my Rosh Yeshiva. And nothing happened unless he authorized it. Besides, his knowledge base was one of a kind. But where did he get this from? Rav Chaim Volozhiner, who was the most special student of Vilna Gaon, he founded the Volozhin Yeshiva in Europe. All the greatest geniuses and Torah scholars attended his yeshiva. And he was visiting a community. And somebody asked him, who are you? He says, I'm a Melamed. Which means an ordinary teacher who teaches, Aleph Beis, Chumash, children. So later they found out that this is Rav Chaim Volozhiner. This is the student, the head of the most prestigious yeshiva in Europe, in Lithuania, and the closest student of the Vilna Gaon. So they asked him, if you are that, why did you say you're a Melamed? He says, the blessing we say on the Torah every morning is Baruch Atah Hashem HaMelami Torah L'Amo Yisrael. Blessed is God who is the teacher of the Torah to the Jewish people. He says, if Hashem identifies himself as a Melamed, so if that's, I shouldn't identify myself as a Melamed. I should boast, I should say I'm that. If God calls himself a Melamed, a teacher, there's nothing pejorative or denigrating or disrespectful to call yourself a Melamed. That's what he answered. What do you mean? You have students, the greatest geniuses of Europe are your students. They stand in your presence, they stand in awe, they revere you. You're a Melamed. They think you're a first-grade teacher. You know what the answer? What difference is what they think? Does it really make a difference? Doesn't make a difference. If it made a difference, he would say he's not that, but it doesn't make a difference. Or what does it make a difference? The ego. No. Let them know who I am. For what reason? If they do know, they don't know, does it really make a difference? Doesn't make a difference. If that's the case, then they don't have to know who I am. But that's humility. A person who's not humble, the person that has always a conflict of interest. Why? Because he gets involved in things, because he's able to get mileage on a personal level. Acknowledgement, satisfy certain interests he has. But if a person's humble, there's no me, it's only God. Or there's more God than me. Person's not humble, me is a major part of who me is, who I am. They automatically, whatever we get involved in, there's always that conflict of interest. Why are you doing it? What's the emphasis? Is it the you or is it God? And that becomes a problem. Sometimes you meet people, you don't hear this word any longer today, but it's not just a vernacular. They reek from arrogance. Reek. Right? Larry, when's the last time you heard the word reek? They reek. That sometimes you don't want to be associated with them. That's how arrogant they are. They're so pompous. They're so self-centered. And all they want you to hear about who they are. Not interested. Many years ago, when I gave lectures at Yad Avram on 63rd Street, so people would come over to me to introduce themselves. And they start name dropping to me. I know A, B, C, D, So I said, I want to ask you a question. All that you tell me who you know and who knows you, does that have any relevance to me? It has no relevance to me. So if it has no relevance, why are you sharing it with me? Dead silence. That's called between the eyes. You understand? So the person realizes then, because I want you to know who I am. You're coming for a lecture. Does it make a difference? Do I know who you are, what you are, what you know, what you don't know? You tell your name is Moshe Ben Chaim. I went to Ramaz. This is the extent of my knowledge. I came to here because I want to increase my knowledge. Could I do something? Could I help? Okay, that's one thing. But who you know, what you don't know, it's irrelevant to me. I have a portfolio of real estate, one of a kind. What does it do for me? You're writing me a check.